The beeping of the heart monitor was too steady. Too calm. Emily hated that sound, like the machine didn't know her baby was dying. She sat beside the tiny hospital crib, holding Liam's tiny hand in her trembling fingers. His skin was pale, his breath shallow. Tubes snaked in and out of his fragile body. She leaned forward and kissed his forehead, her tears leaving warm drops on his cool skin. "Mommy's here. Mommy's not going anywhere," she whispered, even though everything inside her screamed otherwise. "Miss Emily," came the soft voice of the nurse. Emily turned. The woman looked kind, but there was pity in her eyes. "The hospital administrator needs to speak with you, again." Emily nodded, brushing her face dry, then walked into the corridor with the nurse. Mr. Dalton, the hospital's financial officer, waited near the reception desk. His expression was stiff, practiced. He didn't look up from the paper in his hand as he spoke. "Miss Rivers, the surgery cost $112,000. You've paid too." Emily's throat burned. I know. I'm trying. You have 72 hours. After that, we'll have no choice but to transfer your son to a public facility. And I must be honest, there's no guarantee he'll receive treatment there." That sentence hit harder than a bullet. No guarantee. Like Liam's life was just another number on a form. "I'll get the money," she said, gripping her purse tight, though it was nearly empty. "Please don't move him. Just, please." Dalton didn't respond. Just walked away, leaving her standing alone in that sterile, cold hallway with fluorescent lights buzzing above her head. Back at the hospital room, Emily crumpled into the plastic chair. The smell of disinfectant choked her. She had nothing. No family. No savings. No job anymore. She'd been fired when she couldn't stop crying during her waitress shift. She was a 24-year-old woman with amnesia, a dying baby, and no way out. Her fingers brushed the chain around her neck. The silver locket was all she had left of her past, inside, a blurred photo of her as a pregnant bride. Her face, her smile, a man's arm wrapped around her. But the image was smudged, and her memories were worse. The accident had taken everything. Her husband. Her identity. Her past. All she had now was Liam. That night, Emily went to the only person she could think of, Jenny, a former waitress friend who now worked in some shady VIP ward. They met at a 24-hour diner. Jenny raised a brow when Emily explained everything. "You need over $100,000 in 3 days." Emily nodded. Jenny took a slow sip of coffee. "There's a private club. Discreet. Rich men. One-night-only arrangements." Emily's heart sank. "You mean, prostitution?" Jenny shrugged. "Call it what you want. But I've seen girls walk out with more than that in one night." Emily stood up. "I'm not a WH. Then let your baby die." The word sliced through her like glass. Jenny wasn't being cruel, she was being real. Emily sat back down, defeated. Jenny reached into her bag and handed her a black business card. It had no name. Just a number. "Say the code Velvet Sky. They'll know." That night, Emily stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror. Her body was thinner than it had ever been. Her eyes looked hollow. Her lips had forgotten how to smile. She pulled out an old red dress she used to wear when she danced. It still fit, barely. She added makeup, brushed her hair, and for a moment, just a moment, she didn't look like a broken woman. She looked like someone a billionaire might want for a night. She bent down and kissed Liam's sleeping face. "Forgive me, baby. I'm going to sell myself, to save you." The black car arrived at exactly 10 p.m. It was sleek, long, and silent, the kind of vehicle that whispered wealth without needing to shout it. Emily hesitated at the curb, her stomach twisting. Her red dress hugged her like a second skin, and her heels clicked nervously on the sidewalk. She'd never felt more like a stranger to herself. The window rolled down. A man in a suit and earpiece nodded. Miss Rose. That was the fake name she'd given. She nodded. Yes. The door opened. Emily stepped into a world far beyond her own. The drive was quiet. The windows were tinted. The city lights blurred past in streaks of gold and black. She kept thinking about Liam. Was he still breathing okay? Were the nurses checking on him? Would he survive long enough for her to get back? The car pulled up in front of a luxury hotel she couldn't even afford to look at during normal days. Tall marble columns, velvet carpets, glass chandeliers, everything sparkled like a dream meant for someone else. Inside, she was escorted through a private elevator to the top floor, penthouse level. When the doors opened, the air changed. The room smelled like sandalwood and expensive cigars. Waiters in white gloves moved silently. Soft jazz played. Men in tuxedos sipped whiskey and leaned over gold-trimmed chairs, their gazes cold and calculating. Emily's heart pounded. She clutched her tiny purse and whispered to herself, for Liam. Just for one night. Women in designer gowns walked around, all stunning, all quiet. She noticed how they kept their eyes low. They weren't here to be people. They were products. A tall woman approached, red lips, clipboard, attitude. You're late. I'm sorry. You go in third. Mask on, head high. You'll walk the circle once. Bidding begins after. Emily blinked. Mask. A sleek black mask was handed to her. She slipped it on. She was no longer Emily. She was a stranger selling a night of her life. From behind the curtains, she peeked at the room. There were maybe 10 men, seated in a semicircle. All looked powerful. All looked bored. Until one of them walked in late and the air shifted. Tall. Dark suit. Unshaven jaw. Cold grey eyes that carried storms. He took his seat with the confidence of someone who owned the world. And without knowing why, Emily's breath hitched. Something about him felt familiar. Painfully familiar. Now presenting. Rose, the announcer called. Lights dimmed slightly as Emily stepped onto the platform. Every eye turned to her. Some were amused. Some dismissive. Others, hungry. She walked slowly, heels clicking, hands trembling by her sides. She didn't look at anyone. Until her eyes met his, the man in the last chair. He stared at her with a furrowed brow, like he was trying to remember something. She blinked away, heart racing. Why did he feel like déjà vu? The bidding started. $50,000. $100,000. $250,000. Emily's body tightened. Was that enough? Would that save Liam? Then a voice spoke. Calm. Deep. Uninterested. 5 million. The room gasped. All heads turned to the man in the corner, Damian King. Emily's legs nearly gave out. 5 million. The announcer choked. Sold. She was led to the private suite where the winner waited. She could barely feel her feet. The door opened. Damian stood near the window, hands in his pockets, staring out at the skyline. She froze. From the back, he looked like. But no, it couldn't be. She didn't even remember her husband. Drink, he asked, his voice a smooth echo of something long buried. She shook her head. No, thank you. He turned. Their eyes locked. And in that second, something shattered inside her, a flash of a wedding veil, the pair of grey eyes, the whispered I do. But it passed like fog. Too fast to grasp. He studied her face like a puzzle. You seem familiar. Emily's lips trembled. I get that a lot. He didn't press. Instead, he gestured to the couch. Let's just talk. And for hours, that's what they did. No touching. No demands. No expectations. Just talk. She told him lies wrapped in truth. She had no family. She needed money. She hated being here. He told her fragments of his pain. A lost wife. A broken past. A life that felt like sleepwalking. They didn't know they were describing the same tragedy from opposite ends. When silence finally came, he looked at her and said quietly, If I'd met you in another life, I might have fallen for you. Emily smiled faintly. Maybe you did. And neither of them understood what they'd just said. The room was silent when Damien opened his eyes. The faint glow of sunrise spilled through the sheer curtains, bathing the penthouse in soft orange light. But the couch beside him was empty. He sat up quickly, his eyes scanning the suite. No red dress draped over the chair. No heels by the bed. No trace of her scent in the air. She was gone. Damien ran a hand through his hair, confused. Most women who came to these auctions knew the rules. They stayed the full night. They lingered. Some hoped for more. But she had vanished without a word. No name. No note. No goodbye. Just silence. He walked over to the wet bar where they'd sat the night before, their conversation stretching long past midnight. He stared at the empty glass she'd used, lipstick smudged on the rim. It was all he had left of her. Who are you? Something about her still tugged at his memory. The curve of her voice. The way she laughed like she was remembering something she couldn't quite grasp. There was a softness in her sadness, like grief had lived inside her for too long. And those eyes. They haunted him. Hours later, Damien sat in his office, a corner suite that overlooked the city. He'd cancelled his meetings. He couldn't focus. Not until he found her. 5 million, his assistant had said in shock when he returned from the auction. He hadn't even flinched at the amount. He just needed to talk to her, to know her name, her story, the reason she looked like a ghost from his past. Damien leaned back in his chair and stared at the locket on his desk. It was his late wife's. They'd found it in the wreckage 2 years ago, her body never recovered, just this chain and the burning memory of losing her. He opened it. His own face stared back at him beside hers, the woman he married. The woman who vanished. That night had changed everything. They had fought. He'd cancelled dinner again for work. She'd stormed out. Hours later, the police called a crash on the river highway. No ID. No confirmed death. Just blood and wreckage and a missing woman. They searched for weeks. Until hope dried up. Now, 2 years later, he was dreaming again. About her. And about the woman from last night. They weren't the same person. Couldn't be. And yet. He pulled out his phone and dialed the number from the auction. A man answered with a thick European accent. This is King. I need the profile on the woman labeled Rose from last night. A pause. I'm afraid that information is sealed, sir. I'll pay. Even so, we don't keep real names. But. A bit. She paid for her entry in cash. From what the staff overheard, she needed the money urgently, something about a child. Damien's pulse quickened. A child. His thoughts raced. Could it be? Across the city, Emily clutched Liam's hand in the hospital bed. His surgery was scheduled for that afternoon. Thanks to the $5 million now sitting in a locked account, everything was paid for in full. She should have felt relief. But all she felt was guilt. Her body ached. Her soul felt bruised. She had sold a piece of herself that could never be bought back, not for diamonds, not even for life. And worst of all, she'd felt something for him. The man from last night wasn't a monster. He hadn't touched her without asking. He hadn't treated her like she was for sale. He'd made her feel seen. And that scared her more than anything. Later that night, when Liam was taken into surgery, Emily sat in the waiting room, praying. Praying he'd leave. Praying she wouldn't regret what she'd done. Praying she could forget him, the stranger who'd whispered, "If I'd met you in another life, I might have fallen for you." Because part of her, a deep, broken part, felt like she already had. Meanwhile, Damien stared at a blurry image his team pulled from the auction security cameras. It was her. Zoomed in. Masked. But those eyes, full of pain, of something half-remembered, made his throat tighten. He reached for his locket again, opened it, and held the photo beside the screen. It couldn't be. But what if? He turned to his assistant. Start checking recent hospital payments. Private surgeries. Any large cash deposits in the last 24 hours under a fake name. Sir. If she needed money for a child, she'll be at a hospital, Damien said. And I need to know where, now. Damien stood in the hallway of the private hospital, disguised in a cap and hoodie. It wasn't his style, the billionaire CEO of King Enterprises, hiding like a criminal, but he needed to move unnoticed. He had spent the last 2 days chasing ghost trails. Leads that fizzled. Fake names. Dead ends. Until this morning. A cash deposit. $5 million. Paid to a children's hospital in the city. Under the name Emily C. It wasn't much, but it was enough. He pulled out his phone and stared at the grainy auction photo again. The woman in red. The one who vanished. And now, the same name registered as guardian for a little boy having surgery on the 5th floor. Liam. Damien whispered the name to himself like it was sacred. The boy. Around 4. Something stirred deep in his chest. Could he? No. That was impossible. And yet. In the hospital room, Emily sat beside Liam's bed, brushing his hair with trembling fingers. The surgery had gone well. The doctors were hopeful. She should have been resting. But sleep felt foreign, especially after everything she'd done. The night haunted her. Not because of what happened, but because of how he treated her. He hadn't asked for anything cruel. He hadn't been rough or cold. He'd held her like she mattered. Listened to her like she wasn't broken. And his voice. It stayed with her, deep in her bones. I feel like I've known you before. He'd said that in the dark. And something inside her had cracked when he did. Emily stood and walked to the window. Rain had started to fall. She watched as cars passed far below, their lights blurring against the wet streets. A flash of movement made her freeze. A man in a dark hoodie. Standing under a streetlight. Looking up. Her breath caught. Something about the shape of him, the stillness. Her heart thundered. No. It couldn't be. But part of her whispered, it is. Downstairs, Damien stared up at the window. He'd asked the receptionist for room details, pretending to be a family friend. She hadn't believed him. So he waited. Watched. Hoping for a glimpse. And then, a flicker of movement. A woman behind the glass. Ah. She was alive. Not just the woman from the auction. But Emily. His Emily. The wife he buried in his mind but never in his heart. He felt dizzy. Like the ground had shifted beneath him. How? How was she here, alive, hidden, changed? Why hadn't she come back? Inside, Emily stepped away from the window, shaken. She checked on Liam. his chest rising and falling gently in sleep. He looked peaceful now, so unaware of the sacrifice she had made for him. Tears stung her eyes. She didn't regret it. Not if it meant Liam lived. But she did wonder. What would happen now? She had planned to disappear again once he recovered. Take the remaining money, move to a new city, start fresh. No one would ever know what she'd done. But she hadn't planned on the stranger in the hotel making her feel seen. And she hadn't planned on the man outside the hospital making her feel washed. Damien couldn't wait anymore. He stormed inside, headed to the nurse's station. His voice was low but firm. I need to see the guardian of Liam Carson. Tell her it's about her son's father. The nurse blinked. Are you? Tell her I know who she is. Upstairs, Emily heard a soft knock. She turned, expecting a doctor. But the door didn't open. Then the nurse slipped in quietly. There's someone downstairs. He says he's the boy's father. Emily's legs nearly gave out. No one knew. Not even Liam knew. Her past, her real past, was locked away. She didn't even remember most of it. But that name, father, sent a chill through her. Her mind flashed back to the man in the hotel suite. To his eyes. His voice. Could it be? She grabbed her bag and stepped into the hallway. Damien stood at the end of the corridor, still in his hoodie. When he saw her, time stopped. She froze too. His hood fell back. And for the first time in years, they stood just feet apart. He whispered, Emily. Her breath caught. Do I know you? Damien hadn't moved. He couldn't. Not when the woman who had haunted his dreams for 5 years stood in front of him, real, breathing, confused. Emily's face was pale. Her eyes searched his with a look that broke him. Do I know you? The question hit him like a blade. He opened his mouth, but nothing came. What could he say? I'm your husband. You vanished the night of our anniversary. Everyone thought you were dead, including me. Instead, he took a slow step forward. Your name is Emily Carson, he said gently. You have a son. Liam. She flinched at the name, her fingers clutching the wall for balance. I don't know how you found me, she whispered, but this isn't right. You can't be here. Damien's voice cracked. Why didn't you tell me you were alive? She blinked rapidly. I don't remember anything before waking up in a clinic 4 years ago. The doctors said I had trauma-induced amnesia. No ID. No contacts. Nothing. His chest rose and fell in disbelief. You don't remember me. Emily shook her head, pain etched in every movement. I don't remember anyone. I didn't even know my name was Emily until someone found a burned scrap of a photo with that name on it. Damien staggered back, stunned. The pieces were starting to make sense, the disappearance, the silence, the mysterious reappearance under a fake identity. His Emily hadn't left him. She had been taken from herself. She glanced at him again. Why are you looking at me like that? Because you're my wife, he whispered. Silence fell like thunder. Emily's lips parted. Her body swayed slightly. What? I'm Damien King, he said, tears forming. We were married. We lived in New York. You disappeared the night of our anniversary. I searched for you for years, Emily. She stared at him, disbelief clouding her face. Damien reached into his coat and pulled out a worn chain, their wedding rings, strung together. I kept them, he said, voice hoarse. Just in case. Her eyes widened at the sight of the rings. She didn't know why, but something deep in her chest cracked open. Suddenly, images flickered in her mind. A warm kitchen. A man's arms around her waist, humming against her neck. Laughter. A garden full of lilies. A silver necklace. Then. Screams. Smoke. Fire. A crash. She gasped and clutched her head. Damien caught her before she collapsed. Easy, he murmured, guiding her to a bench outside the hospital room. She was trembling. I saw something, she whispered. I saw you. But it was blurry. There was fire. You were in a car accident that night, Damien said softly. You were on your way to surprise me. I got the call from the hospital, but they said your body was never found in the wreck. Just a burned car, and blood. I don't remember that, she whispered. I didn't stop looking, he said. But then your medical records were wiped. The case went cold. Everyone told me to move on. Emily stared at him, her mind spinning. All this time, she had wondered why no one came for her. Why her life felt hollow, like a dream she couldn't wake from. And here he was, the man she had unknowingly sold herself to, the man she had loved all along. It was you, she said suddenly. He looked up. That night in the hotel, she whispered. The man who bought me. It was you, wasn't it? His eyes filled with tears. Yes. I didn't recognize you until after you left. And by then, you were gone again. Emily turned her face away. The shame of what she'd done tried to crawl up her spine. I sold myself for my son, she whispered. I thought I was doing it for survival. Damien moved closer. You were saving our son. She jerked. What? Liam, he said. He's my son too. Isn't he? Emily looked down at her hands. I didn't know who his father was. After I woke up, I had no memory. I was already pregnant. I thought it might have been from the crash, or something worse. I never wanted to think about it. He looks like my mother, Damien said gently. Same eyes. Emily let out a soft sob. I didn't know. I swear. He nodded, voice barely audible. Neither did I. The door behind them creaked open. A nurse peeked out. He's asking for his mom. Emily stood immediately, but paused. Then turned back to Damien. Do you want to meet him? His heart thudded in his chest. More than anything. They entered the room together. Liam sat up slightly, sleepy but alert. His brown eyes blinked at the tall man walking in. Damien smiled and crouched beside the bed. Hey there, buddy. Liam tilted his head. Are you a doctor? Damien chuckled softly. No. Just someone who's really happy to meet you. Emily sat on the other side, brushing Liam's hair. This is Damien. He helped us, remember? Liam nodded slowly. You gave mommy the money. Damien's eyes glistened. I did. Because you're very important. Liam grinned. I'm strong now. You sure are. He reached out, and Liam gave him a tiny high five. Emily watched them, the man she couldn't remember and the boy she would never forget, sharing a moment that felt more like destiny than coincidence. And for the first time in years, she felt like she might belong somewhere again. The night air was cool outside the hospital. Emily stood alone by the fountain, her arms wrapped around herself. The sound of water cascading into stone was the only noise besides her breath. She had left Liam with the nurses for a few minutes. He needed air. She needed space. She needed to think. Her husband. Her son's father. The man she sold herself to in desperation was the man she once loved. How could fate twist so cruelly, and yet so perfectly? Footsteps crunched on the gravel behind her. She didn't need to turn. I remember something, she whispered. Damien stepped beside her. Silent. Waiting. I was standing in a kitchen, she said slowly, and you came up behind me. You kissed my neck. I was humming. He didn't say anything, but his eyes brimmed with hope. I didn't know who you were, she said. Until just now. I didn't even know what that memory was. I thought it was a dream. Damian exhaled. It wasn't. That was our Sunday mornings. You always made cinnamon pancakes, even when we were broke. A tiny laugh escaped her lips. I hate cinnamon. He grinned. You do. But I love it. And you said, love is about sharing what you hate, just to watch someone else enjoy it. Her breath caught. The word sounded familiar. Like something carved into her bones. I can't believe I forgot you, she whispered. You didn't choose to, he said gently. And you never left me. You were taken. She turned to him. So what happens now? Damian looked up at the stars for a long moment. I don't know, he admitted. You've built a life for yourself, even without your memories. You raised our son. You fought through pain I can't imagine. She shook her head. It's not a life. It was survival. Everything before Liam was a blur. I thought I was broken. You're not, he said firmly. You're the strongest person I know. Emily stepped closer, barely a breath between them. But who am I now? She asked. Am I the woman who kissed you in the kitchen, or the woman who sold herself in a hotel room? You're both, Damian said softly. And neither. You're whoever you choose to be now. But I know this. He took her hand. I never stopped loving you. And I never stop. Tears filled her eyes. I don't know if I can be her again, she whispered. Your wife. I don't remember our vows. I don't remember our first kiss. Damian smiled sadly. Then we'll start over. They stood there for a long time. No pressure. No expectations. Just two souls rediscovering what was lost. Inside the hospital room, Liam stared. Emily returned to his side, Damian beside her. They sat in silence, watching their son sleep. He has your nose, Damian said suddenly. Emily chuckled softly. Poor kid. He laughed, and it was a warm, real sound. The first time in years he had laughed without bitterness. Do you remember the name of the bear you gave him? She asked quietly. He shook his head. Mr. Buttons, she said, eyes misty. Even when I didn't know anything else, I remembered that. I just didn't know why. He looked at her, stunned. I won that bear for you at a fair. You were pregnant. We said we'd give it to him when he was born. Emily nodded, heart pounding. So it was yours, ours. Yes. She leaned back, exhaustion washing over her. I feel like I've been underwater for years, and I'm finally coming up for air. Damian reached over, brushing a strand of hair from her face. You don't have to figure everything out tonight. But I want to, she said. I want to remember. I want to know who I was, and who I can be. The door creaked open, and a nurse entered with a clipboard. Miss Carter. Or, Mrs. King. Emily hesitated. Damian stood. We'll just go with Emily for now, he said kindly. The nurse nodded. Just some forms for Liam's transfer. He's doing much better. Should be cleared for discharge soon. Emily signed without thinking, then paused at the signature line. She wrote Emily Carter. Then stared. That wasn't her name. Not really. She glanced at Damian. Then slowly, carefully, added a line below. Emily King. When they left the hospital the next morning, the sun was rising. Emily held Liam in her arms. Damian walked beside them, the small hospital bag slung over his shoulder. They stepped outside together, into a world where everything had changed, yet somehow felt more right than it ever had. As they reached the parking lot, Emily paused. "I want to visit that kitchen," she said suddenly. He blinked. "What?" "The one from the memory. The place where I made cinnamon pancakes and you annoyed me with kisses." A grin broke across his face. "You're going to hate the wallpaper." She smirked. "I probably picked it." He laughed. "You did." And for the first time since she woke up in that clinic years ago, she didn't feel lost. She felt like she was finally coming home. Sunlight filtered through the nursery window. The morning was quiet except for birdsong and Liam's soft breathing. Emily sat at the kitchen table, wrapped in a thick sweater Damien had left out for her. A steaming mug of tea sat untouched before her. She stared at a photo album he'd placed beside it. On the cover, the Williams family, year 1. She opened it slowly. There they were. Her and Damien on their wedding day. She wore a sunflower in her hair, just like the ones on that ugly wallpaper. Her smile was dazzling, full of life. Damien's arm was around her tightly like he couldn't believe she was real. Page after page. Their first apartment. Damien painting the nursery. Her baby shower. Holding Liam for the first time. All of it evidence that her life had not just existed, it had mattered. Tears rolled down her cheeks. But this time, they weren't just from sorrow. They were from knowing she had loved and been loved deeply. And still was. She heard a soft creak. Damien stepped into the kitchen, phone in hand, face pale. "What is it?" she asked immediately. He placed the phone on the table between them and turned the screen toward her. A photo of them at the house. Together. Holding Liam. Underneath. Billionaire CEO Damien Williams seen reuniting with dead wife, who's been missing for 3 years. Another headline flashed. Mystery woman who sold her night for $10K is the billionaire's wife. Emily stared at the screen, her blood running cold. "How did they get this?" she asked. "I don't know," Damien said grimly. "Maybe a neighbor recognized you. Or someone followed us." The article had gone viral overnight. By noon, the front of the house had reporters stationed outside. Cameras. Drones. A crowd of people buzzing like vultures. Emily peeked through the curtain and stepped back, heart pounding. "They think I abandoned my husband and child and then sold myself," she whispered. "This is what they'll believe." Damien stepped closer. "Let me speak to the press. I can clear this." "No," she cut in, shaking her head. "I need to speak for myself." They set up a press conference in front of the house. Emily wore a simple navy dress Damien found in the back of the closet. Her hair was tied back, and she held Liam close on her hip. Cameras clicked wildly as she stepped onto the porch. "I know what you've all heard," she began, voice steady but raw. "That I sold my night to a stranger. That I vanished from my husband's life and abandoned my child. But none of that is the full truth." She paused, taking a breath. 3 years ago, I was in a car accident. I lost my memory. I didn't even know my own name. I woke up terrified, holding a baby I barely remembered carrying. I ran. I survived. I worked jobs no one wanted. I begged for food. I did what I had to do to keep my son alive." Her voice cracked. She kissed the top of Liam's head. "I was desperate. One night, I agreed to something awful, not knowing that the man who offered me money was my own husband. I didn't recognize him. But now, piece by piece, I remember." Reporters leaned in, stunned. "I'm not ashamed of surviving," she finished. "But I am sorry. For the pain Damien went through. For the years we lost." She turned slightly, looking at Damien standing behind her. "I may never remember everything. But I remember this, how he makes me feel. Safe. Seen. Loved. The cameras kept flashing. But no one spoke. She turned and walked back inside. Damien followed, closing the door behind them. The silence after the storm was deafening. Emily collapsed onto the couch, heart racing. Was that a mistake? No, Damien said. You were perfect. The news outlets exploded with headlines. Not a scandal, a tragedy. Wife who lost her memory speaks out. She didn't abandon them, she fought to survive. Some still judged. But many defended her. Women. Mothers. Survivors. Thousands of messages poured in from people who saw her as brave, not broken. And for the first time, Emily saw herself that way, too. That night, she sat in the backyard while Liam played in the grass, laughing at a butterfly. Damien joined her with 2 glasses of wine. The world's talking about us, he said. I only care what you think, she said, looking up. I think I love you more now than I ever did, he said softly. Because now I've seen what you look like when everything is taken from you, and you still choose to fight. Tears welled in her eyes. I want to remember everything, Damien. Every kiss. Every fight. Every time you held me through the night. You will, he said. But even if you don't, we'll make new ones. She leaned into his shoulder. The wind picked up, warm and sweet. And for the first time in years, she felt whole. A week had passed since Emily's story shook the internet. The chaos had quieted. Reporters stopped camping outside. Online trolls had moved on to the next scandal. And Emily finally had peace. But one thing still haunted her. She still couldn't remember everything. Some memories were shards, Damien's cologne on her pillow. Her wedding ring on her hand. The sound of Liam crying in the middle of the night. But others were still locked away. She sat in the attic one afternoon, alone, flipping through more photo albums. Her fingers traced a picture of her and Damien in Italy, sunset glowing behind them, her head thrown back in laughter. The caption read in Damien's handwriting. She ordered wine. I proposed instead. She smiled. Something about that night tugged at her chest. Footsteps creaked behind her. Damien appeared in the doorway, holding something. A small wooden box. I was waiting for the right moment, he said, handing it over. She opened it. Inside were love letters. Dozens of them. All written in her own handwriting. To my stubborn, impossible, perfect husband. If I die before you, remember this, loving you was the best choice I ever made. Some nights I can't believe you're real. Other nights, I watch you sleep just to be sure. Emily covered her mouth. I wrote this. Every anniversary. Every time I traveled. Every time we fought and made up. You always wrote even when you couldn't speak it out loud. Tears blurred her vision. These words, she whispered, they are still me. They always were, Damien said gently. That night, after Liam had gone to sleep, Damien lit candles all around the garden. Soft music floated from a speaker. The stars glimmered above them. Emily stepped outside in a white sundress. Damien stood waiting, holding something behind his back. She laughed softly. You're recreating our first date. Almost, he smiled. This time, I'm hoping you'll say yes again. He pulled out a small velvet box. Inside, a new ring. Simple. Elegant. A single diamond, like the first. Emily, he said, I don't want you to feel like you have to become her again. I want this version of you. The one who braved the worst and came home anyway. He knelt. Will you marry me, again? She blinked back tears. Yes. He stood, slipping the ring onto her finger. And kissed her like the first time, and the last. 6 months later. The courthouse was filled with whispers and nerves. Emily stood beside Damien in a sleek navy suit, her hair in soft curls. Beside her, a judge read the documents formally. Emily Williams, do you confirm your identity and wish to re-establish full legal custody and recognition of your marriage, family estate, and maternal rights? I do, she said confidently. No hesitation. No fear. She had gone from a nameless woman on the streets to a wife, a mother, and a warrior who reclaimed her life. The judge smiled and stamped the final page. Then I declare this family restored. Applause broke out. Tears streamed down Damien's face. He wrapped his arms around her and Liam. This time, nothing would take them from each other again. Later that evening, they returned home. The mansion wasn't just a mansion anymore, it was a home. Emily walked into the nursery, sat on the floor, and pulled Liam into her lap. He giggled and placed a hand on her cheek. "Mommy," he whispered. She smiled. "Yes, baby. Mommy's here." He leaned forward and kissed her nose. Damien watched from the doorway, heart full. "I don't think I'll ever deserve the way you two saved me," she said to Damien that night. He sat beside her, pulling her close. "You don't have to deserve it. You just have to live it." 1 year later. The story of Emily's return had become a national conversation. From shame to inspiration, her story touched millions. She was invited to speak at women's shelters, advocacy conferences, and hospitals. She told women who had lost everything that they could still start over. That survival didn't make them weak. That memory wasn't the only thing that defined love. Emily founded a nonprofit called the Second Sunrise Foundation, helping women who had escaped domestic abuse, memory loss, or homelessness. Every time she stood on stage and told her story, she reminded them, "I sold a night to save my child. And that man turned out to be my husband." Life is strange. But love, real love, finds a way home. One morning, while walking through the garden, Liam tugged her hand. "Mommy," he said, pointing to the sunflowers, "that's where you married Daddy." Emily froze. She didn't remember it, but she felt it. She knelt beside him and whispered, "You know what? I think you're right." Damien walked up and wrapped his arms around them both. "Let's make a new memory here," he said. So right there, among the sunflowers, in the golden morning sun, they kissed again. Not as strangers. Not as survivors. But as a family, rebuilt from the ashes. And this time, they weren't just home. They were the home.